Nobody is in the mood for puns or alliteration. I understand that, but also I can't help myself. There are one, two, three potential contributors at wide receiver for Ohio State who are in the transfer portal, and it's a throwing Thursday on the beat because of that. So welcome to the Austin and Berm Show, the beat. It is a Three Thoughts Thursday, a throw-in Thursday. It's presented by the Waterworks. He's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. 3 Buckeyes going out, plus Carnell Tate. Plus DeMaran Witten as well, although that was back and forth between tight end and wide receiver. Wasn't sure to even include that, but Berm, you look at this, everything going on. Brian, Hartline also gone, and Cortez Hankton in. So much going on with wide receiver U at Ohio State. I almost can't believe it. This is attrition and transition that has never happened in the history of the Ohio State wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, especially at this scale, obviously, even just adding one receiver to the mix, which Ohio State did on Wednesday with the addition of Devin McQueen from UTSA, is a step that Ohio State hasn't taken. Brian Hartline made it a point to not add players from the transfer portal as a promise to the receivers that he recruited, and he's not there anymore, and neither are a handful of the guys that he recruited. So you have no choice if you're Ohio State but to add to that room. Buckeyes had their eyes on a few other players, including 3 different guys that have committed to LSU in the last 3 days. So it did change the board a little bit. DeAndre Moore, the wide receiver from Texas, is still apparently deciding. Looks like he's leaning towards Kentucky at the time as we record this on Wednesday evening. But the Buckeyes still feel like they have a group that's pretty good. And that's where I think this has to start is, yeah, you have losses, you have concerning departures like Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham. Mylan, who we talked about on Wednesday's edition of The Beat, and Quincy, who we hinted at on Wednesday's edition of The Beat when we recorded it Wednesday afternoon. But you still have the best receiver on the planet, and you still have Brandon Ennis, and you still have a handful of really good young guys behind him. It's just now a matter of Cortez Hankton going to be in a position to really make or break his legacy at Ohio State pretty early, because he's going to be put to the task by Ohio State fans if this group comes out and doesn't seem to be what it has been for the last 9 years.
It's pretty wild, everything that is on the plate for Cortez Hankton. Just big picture, having to come in and replace Brian Hartline, and the standard being the standard, to live up to the sky high standard that was set by the previous position coach there. That's job one. Then you have to work to maintain and retain the roster. You have all these other things going on with Quincy Porter going in the portal, Mylan Graham going in the portal. Any efforts that you might make for one or both to try and get them out, doesn't feel like that is likely to happen with Quincy Porter, given some of the financial ramifications that we discussed, as you mentioned on Wednesday, or we hinted at on Wednesday. He also has to start, right? Like the 2027 visit schedule, Berm, is underway for.
He's already on the road. I mean, that's happening this week for Ohio State coaches. So they're on the road, and he made his first visit. He made his first offer out this week to Easton Royal, a 5-star from Louisiana, New Orleans, where he's from. So he's not getting any break there either.
Yeah, so he's got to coach the position. He's got to learn. He's got to move to Columbus. He has to attack the portal. He has to attack the future on the recruiting front. How much of that it needs to be weighed for portal versus 2027 right now is up for debate. And we had that to some extent on Wednesday, so we don't need to rehash all of that. But all of this happening at once for him in the first week in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. And that also, I think, shed some light on why, because Ryan Day has proven to be pretty methodical in his hiring process. Clearly, Ohio State knew that there was going to be a lot of transition and attrition going on at wide receiver in some form or fashion. Even if you're just starting with Carnell Tate going to the NFL draft, Bryson Rodgers had entered the transfer portal in December already and wasn't with the team for the Cotton Bowl. You knew there was going to be 2 with the possibility of 3, 4, and then now 5. So Ryan Day had to make a hire early. So I think that probably ramped up the scheduling process in a way that, also is going to bleed over into this offensive coordinator conversation and trying to put the staff together. There was not a world where Ryan Day could go into January 1 and Brian Hartline heading to Tampa, Florida, and taking over at South Florida, where you couldn't have somebody managing that room, because this is as chaotic as it has ever been for that position specifically. We could say that college football as a whole was that way, but this has never happened to this scale for Ohio State at wide receiver, and they didn't have the same security net that they used to.
Yeah, and that's understandable when you lose a guy like Brian Hartline, who's been the heart and soul of the recruiting identity for the last decade. That's what Cortez Hankton signed up for. The good news for Ohio State and for Cortez Hankton is that he coached at LSU in Georgia. He's not a guy that is unfamiliar with high pressure situations or high expectations. So I don't think he's going to come into this and ask for anybody to take it easy on him or to give him a break. But he's also going to be walking into a bit of a hornet's nest when it comes to this era of college football and Ohio State's attempt to adjust to it. As I wrote about on Tuesday night at Letterman Row, like there are changes coming. We talked about it on this show on Wednesday morning, but some of that I think is just a holistic reallocation of resources in the future. Unless you are a Jeremiah Smith type of wide receiver, it's going to be difficult to make the case that you should be receiving millions of dollars at a place like Ohio State to catch the football, because the reality is, if you look at the teams in this playoff right now, the remaining teams, you've got good receivers. There's no doubt about it, including superstars at Oregon like DeCorian Moore, who's a true freshman. So he's not making the multiple millions of dollars a year that Jeremiah Smith is. But in the future, I just don't see that. That's not going to matter. Like Miami's best receiver is a 17-year-old who had 3 catches against Ohio State and 3 fumbles in that game. So like it doesn't matter if you can block the quarterback, if you can get to the quarterback and you have a quarterback that doesn't make mistakes in key moments. That's how you still win football games. And I think Ohio State is looking at itself in the mirror and asking for the future, does this entire roster have to be reshaped? And again, you never turn down players like Jeremiah Smith, understandably, but players like Jeremiah Smith don't exist that regularly. So it's not a conversation you actually have to have. The question is, what does the roster need to win? And how do you build it in this era where the Buckeyes are being forced every single year, and in some cases every 4 months, to renegotiate with players at positions that, when you look across the NFL, are fairly expendable. So it's just a very strange time, and it's going to take a lot of readjustment from Ohio State fans' perspective, I think, to understand like this is a transitionary phase of the Ohio State football approach, and we'll see how that goes. But the initial response has not been great.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, Berm, from just like a sheer numbers perspective, because Ryan Day used to say, this is how you're gonna have X number of players at this position. We want X here, X there, X in every spot. And last year, you can fact check me here if I'm wrong, Ohio State had 14 scholarship wide receivers, and the way that it had always approached recruiting at that position with Brian Hartline's reputation was, double digit of those guys were going to be 4 or 5-star players. That's right? 14 is the number.
Yep.
Is there going to be, do you think, an adjustment just in terms of the allocation of roster spots? Because I know that Ryan Day has talked often about the difficulty of moving forward into the future, where they wanted to lower the scholarship numbers, remove the scholarship caps, or not have walk-ons, and he wanted a roster of over 100 people. That's how you've always practiced for college football. Let's set all that debate aside. Is that what you're talking about? Like that maybe, aside from how much you're paying them, maybe 14 wide receivers is just not a feasible approach anymore?
It's not even that's just not feasible. It's pointless, because 8 of those guys are going to leave every 2 years. So what is the reason for that? At this point, I think you almost have to look at the roster. I'm not saying like a 53-man NFL roster, but I'm saying 60. If it's 60 guys, who cares? Then you have 40 other players that you say, hey, you guys are just on our practice squad, and we'll see what happens over these next couple of years. But then those players are just rotated in and out. They don't matter. And it's not, to me, even a knock on a guy like Quincy Porter, who's a former 5-star recruit. It doesn't matter. If you're not a guy that can come in and be an impact player in year 1, then there is no way that Ohio State can count on you to be there in year 2. And even in the case of players who come in year 1 and become impact players, if you're immediately turning around and asking for dollar amounts that are putting you at odds with what the program needs to build a successful football program, or to build a successful team for the next year, then you're expendable as well. And that's just the way it's going to have to be. There is nobody that is going to be able to bully a program like Ohio State into paying for them if they don't want to. So, there were discussions all day Wednesday. Again, as we record this, we don't ever like to be late on things or to talk about things that haven't happened, or maybe talk about them or not talk about them if they do. But it's 6:00 on Wednesday night as we record this. And the primary discussion all day Wednesday on the Letterman Row message board has been about Bo Jackson, because, he's a guy that is in a similar position to Quincy Porter, but he actually contributed and actually had a major impact on the team. Very
dissimilar in that way.
Right. So he actually has a bit of an argument, I think, to walk in and say, hey, I came in for less money. I did the right things. I contributed. Now I'm the guy. Let's talk. And I think that's a different conversation. I think Ohio State still has to make some tough decisions in those circumstances, because I still struggle with the idea that a college second-year running back should make more money than a second-round pick in the NFL draft, like TreVeyon Henderson. And from what I understand, the request from that side is more than what TreVeyon's salary was for the New England Patriots this year, and more than both TreVeyon and Quinshon made in their final year at Ohio State. So, and maybe combined. So, like, it becomes a very different conversation than it ever has before. And if you look at the way the NFL has devalued running backs over the last few years, if you look at, the way that the game is going, I don't know that you can reasonably and logically just pay for everyone for that amount of money when you have a roster of that size. Like, so you almost have to say, screw the 105. Like, we're going 60 scholarship players, and we're going to pay all the scholarship players a lot more money than we'd like to, or than we have in the past out of the primary funds, out of the rev cap number. And then you just say, beyond that, if someone gets hurt, we're screwed. Like, that's it. And hope someone on the practice squad, or like, I just don't know how it works from this point moving forward in college football. It's certainly a fundamental change that has to happen to the way rosters are constructed.
Yeah, there is. But Ohio State did add to it on Wednesday. And, you look at UT, San Antonio, Devin McEwen. I tell you what, the highlight reels can be very misleading, especially when you're looking at high school players. But this is college level experience. Now, some of it is coming against lesser competition than Devin McEwen will face at Ohio State. But speed shows up on film. The playmaking does. And I did a double take. Again, you can fact check me, Berm. You never will hesitate to tell me if I'm wrong. Some of the screen stuff, some of the speed stuff, I was thinking, this doesn't remind me of Dontre Wilson. It doesn't remind me of Jalen Marshall. It reminds me of KJ Hill. And I looked up, and I know that program height and weights must be taken with a grain of salt. KJ Hill, 6 foot 195. Devin McEwen, 6 foot 195. So I know that they might not carry it the exact same way, and the speed might not be the exact same. That's the kind of weapon that I saw on film.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that comparison. I think that you get a player here who's really productive. He's had 40-plus catches in all 3 of his college seasons at UTSA, including 65 catches this past season and 8 touchdowns. He's a guy that has found the end zone. He makes catches down the field. He makes catches in the slot. He can run the ball and work in the backfield. He's done other things like that. I'm going to tell you, he visited Ohio State on Tuesday. There were people around the program asking that information not be made public. And what you start to see is why Ohio State doesn't want that stuff public, because the minute that it gets known that Devin McEwen is visiting Ohio State, all of a sudden his phone's blowing up with calls from other schools and saying, hey, well, if you're there, we'll give you a little bit more. We'll do this. And so, the Buckeyes wanted to get him in and get him on campus and get an opportunity to really connect with him as a person and see how he is as a fit for the program. Clearly, he liked it. And I know Michigan and other schools have been involved. Texas was a team that was looking into it in the last couple of days as well. Texas obviously went to UTSA and took Trey Moore, the defensive end edge rusher that Ohio State was interested in last year in the transfer portal. This is a guy who you have to pencil in your top 4, because you don't bring in a 4th-year guy that's this productive without that sort of vision. Interesting. I don't know if he's an outside guy or not. I don't know if it opens up the door for Brandon Ennis to work more outside. I don't know if it opens up the door for a fundamental shift in Ohio State's offense where you use 2 slot receivers more often. There's a lot of ways you can do. It's not like the era of KJ Hill and Paris Campbell and Terry McLaurin and Johnny Dixon was full of outside guys. They all played all over the place. So you can certainly move guys around. I'd like to see more Jeremiah Smith in the slot, if you don't mind. So like I
how
think,
about all slot everybody?
all slot everybody all the time. And this is just what you have to do if you're Ohio State. You are in a position where you have to A, replace what you are losing. B, make sure you get a little leaner and quicker with the ball in their hands. And that's one of the things that they're really trying to do here. Because as the season ended and a lot of the conversation about this offense and the struggles it had this year were underway, a lot of the discussion was, hey, we are not explosive enough. And so when you put on Devin McEwen's tape, you can see that he's a guy that you like. And now you see if you can build around him. I don't think that there's a closed door for more receivers in this portal action, but I don't think there's anybody right now that is like highlighted as the guy to watch, except for potentially conversation with Mylan Graham. But I have a tough time seeing that happening as well if he's asking for anywhere near the money that Quincy Porter was.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's getting leaner and quicker, and so are you, Berm, thanks to Awaken 180.
Thanks. Yeah, I started Awaken 180. I don't know if you knew this. Mid-December. Okay. So right now it's January the 8th. I'm down 25 pounds, which is a lot of weight in 4 weeks. And it wasn't because I'm like super disciplined. I'm just following the plan. I'm just doing what the coaches say. And that's really the important thing about Awaken 180 is it's giving me structure. It's giving me coaching. It's giving me actual support and not just that motivation that fades in a week or two. Some of that support, of course, is watching you lose a lot of weight in the last couple of years. And I feel good. My joints feel great. So if you are on your own weight loss journey, don't give up. Start now if you need to. Go to awaken180weightloss.com and you could probably lose 20 pounds by the end of January if you started this week. And I know that sounds crazy, but you can do it. Awaken180weightloss.com. Join us now.
It's true. So I know you love when I do this because I love it when we try and handicap percentage odds of something happening. I think I said 15% when I was asked about the opportunity that Cortez Hankton would have to bring Mylan Graham back. Are you higher or lower?
I would say that's probably about right. I mean, again, what you're going to find, and you and I had a brief conversation about this on Wednesday after recording, speaking about Quincy Porter, and like you can look at it and you say, well, there's no way anyone's going to pay that, but they're going to pay it because that's what the market is allowing. And so there are teams that are having, again, Mark Cuban type money or Larry Ellison or Phil Knight or one of these guys, Cody Campbell, who are saying, hey, doesn't matter to us because as long as they can say he has a real job that he's being paid for to take advantage of his NIL, even if it doesn't have to be proved, even if the Deloitte clearinghouse thing has gone completely vanished, who the hell knows what that is?
What happened to that?
I mean, no one knows. And so there are teams that have the money and they're going to spend it. And Ohio State is certainly not in that position right now. And I know that pisses people off to no end to hear because they know Ohio State brings in a ton of revenue, but the Buckeyes can't just take that money and put it towards players. They are not allowed. And if there's one thing I think the NCAA would actually still punish, it'd probably be that. So you have to have a major benefactor donating, and Ohio State right now does not have that one or two guys. So if Mylan wants to continue to work at Ohio State, and I know that there were some rumors that he was even there on Tuesday working out still, which is a good sign. But if the ask is for a kid heading into year 3 who has a combined 3 catches in his career and isn't a particularly great practice player or a real culture setter in the roster, I don't know how you can pay that amount if you're Ohio State right now. You just simply can't, because the simple truth is you're paying Chris Henry Jr. a lot of money. Like, so, and this goes back to the conversation that we had 3 years ago about Nico Iamilava. Like, once you're paying someone that money, that dude has to play. Like, because you can't just waste it. So, you don't ever want to make promises to freshmen, but if you have a guy coming in like Chris Henry Jr. and he's making multiple $1 million a year, like, sorry, Chris Henry Jr., you better be ready to go because you're the starter. You're opposite Jeremiah Smith. Welcome to the show. Like, that's who you are now. So I don't see Ohio State going back to that well with Mylan unless he comes back and asks for a considerably reduced amount of money. And that's only going to happen if the rest of the market out there realizes that he is not anywhere near a finished product yet.
Yeah. I mean, what you said about making promises, Chris Henry Jr. style, the second that you do make one, a guarantee on a contract with that amount of money, you are also making a promise for playing time. Like, I didn't, thinking back to 2 or 3 years ago and the conversations that we had, which are constantly evolving, just the same way they are in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, where it's like, hey, if you have these freshmen in this portal era, you need to play them or they're going to get unhappy and leave. That time has come and gone. Now it's you have to get return on the investment that you're spending because, and it also means that you have to get your evaluations right because some of this, whether that's Devin McEwen or maybe even something that's more obvious when everyone has unanimous agreement on Chris Henry Jr., like you're not really afforded the luxury of making mistakes, even if you have Texas Tech's money or Michigan's money or Indiana's money or Oregon's money, or even the amount that Ohio State has, which is more relative to the vast majority of college football. That margin for error is shrinking. And that used to be the difference maker as we're talking solely about wide receivers on this Throwing Thursday presented by the Waterworks. It's like that was why they had 14. All right, you missed on 2 out of the 4. Well, they were all supposed to be 4 or 5 stars. Some hit and some didn't. That's the part where Cortez Hankton now is going to have to be a difference maker. If there is one thing that we could nitpick with Brian Hartline and looking at this situation heading into 2026 where he's not here, the quote unquote developmental pieces that they've had to take on in the last couple of years, we've not really seen them come through to this point. I don't know that that's a knock on Brian Hartline as much as a reflection of the difficulty of doing it while also managing the salary cap that is largely devoted to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate for very good reason. But if that wasn't something that was an X factor for Brian Hartline, and part of the reason that we didn't see Ohio State play a ton of depth, it may be a requirement for Cortez Hankton to get that part addressed.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. That was the shift in wide receiver recruiting that happened really in the class of 2025 for Ohio State when you bring in Bod Penn Miller and Phillip Bell and Quincy Porter. Quincy Porter did take significantly less money to attend Ohio State in his recruitment. He did that at the time to come play for Brian Hartline. And so, there was that discussion when the news about Brian's departure hit that, well, maybe you don't get that discount anymore, that Hartline discount. And that's clear. No one's giving them the Hartline discount. But I also, again, as we go back to Bo Jackson and veer away from running or wide receiver for a minute, it doesn't matter. It's every position. This is the way it's going until something happens around NCAA football where there are rules and there are guidelines and there are structures in place that prevent these sorts of recurring every 3-month conversations. Like this is unsustainable. It cannot work forever. And Ohio State, again, it has been the most recession-proof program in the country for the last 100 years. And we're going to find out probably in the next couple of years how well they are equipped to handle it this time, because this is the way it's going to be. And the Buckeyes seem much more resolute and much more steadfast in their belief that if they waver, if they buckle, that the floodgates are going to open and more of these things are going to happen. So I think that there's a lot of these conversations that they're trying to have kind of on the fly, and unfortunately, you're being forced to have them while it's occurring, which it does not put you in a great position. Again, when you have coaches who are expecting to be out on the road and visiting recruits, and we have this conversation about Bo Jackson on Wednesday, but Carlos Lachlan at the same time is down in Tennessee visiting David Gabriel George as the number 1 running back in the country in the class of 2027. And you have to know, if you're Ohio State, you're not getting David Gabriel Georges if you're not paying that amount of money to get him out of high school.
Yeah.
So that's the way it's going to go now. So you have to be exceptionally on point, as you said, with your evaluations, because what you're going to see is Ohio State signing 14 or 15 high school kids a year now instead of 30. And those 14, 15 are all going to be high earners. And then you better nail those evaluations, and then you have to play them in year 1 to make sure you got the evaluation right. Because if you didn't get it right, you as a program need to be able to say, okay, you can move on, because there's no loyalty. Loyalty is not a one-way street now. So you can't bring in kids and pay them that amount of money and then have them not perform. Like, then you got to tell them to move on. So it's just going to, the soul of this game, which has always been secretly about money, is now very, very publicly about money. And boy, it's ugly, but welcome to the new world.
Yeah. I'm hoping
it's exactly what everyone thought it was going to be. Like it just happened in 5 years, which, I remember, again, 5 years ago, sitting at Big Ten Media Day, Ryan Day saying, we are not going to recognize the sport in 5 years. He was pretty spot on.
Yeah, you're right. We all knew that this would be impossible to manage, and then the courts made it so. Um, and I don't see how that's going to change. But I'm hoping, what I'm optimistic for, and I don't know how long it will take, how long we have to live through this era of the Wild West. The fact that now everyone has it out in the open, it is not a secret. A lot of people are sort of winking and nudging. Oh gosh, what's happened to the SEC dominance in the college football playoff? Or why aren't Georgia and Alabama winning every single game they play anymore? Oh, could it be that NIL is legal for everyone? Yeah, that part had to come to the surface. And now I think, whether, again, maybe this won't happen, maybe it's too optimistic, maybe it's naive, maybe it's stupid, maybe it's all of the above, that everyone sees this amount of money and is like, well, you know what? We should do something about that at the congressional level or the legislative level, or like, it's out of control and it's undeniable. But I do think it has to be out in the open for anybody to actually do anything about it. So
yeah, but that starts with simple accounting. That counts with simply having a way to track the amount of money that's coming into the program. And that is even the most simple, basic structures, which is to say, if Cody Campbell wants to donate to Texas Tech, everyone has to know how much money he's put into the program. Like that, number one, like you have to do that. If there are clandestine donors who, and even a guy like him who's out publicly and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing, like, until there's a way to say, actually, Cody Campbell donated $55 million last year. Like, someone has to put that stuff on paper. It cannot be secret. And
well, I think that maybe the IRS would be interested in that, don't you think?
You'd think, but where are they? The refusal to have any basic like guardrail is just insane. But whatever. Here's the bigger truth is this: barring any more like crazy attrition from Ohio State, the Buckeyes are still going to be real damn good.
Yeah.
Okay. But you also have to now pay Julian Sayin a whole lot more money. All right. Because a year ago, Julian Sayin was in this position that Bo Jackson and Quincy Porter were, where he came in and said, I'm the presumptive starter next year and I'm a quarterback and I now need this amount of money. And had the ask from Julian Sayin a year ago been Darian Mensah money or Carson Beck money, or what we're now seeing with
Brandon Sorsby,
or the kid up in Washington, or
Demont
anybody,
Williams.
Ohio State would have told Julian Sayin to hit the bricks.
Yeah.
But this year, I don't think you can do that now that you have a Heisman finalist at quarterback. So like all of this money, like you have to find a balance somewhere. It's not like it's just a pool that's like, well, okay, well, you're asking for this amount. Sure, we'll get it to you. And this will not affect anyone else. If you want Ohio State to be able to land former 5-star defensive linemen who are transferring from Alabama, who are supposed to visit on Thursday, well, guess what? You got to have money to pay them somewhere. If you want Caden McDonald to return, and that is still maybe a 50-50 proposition at this point with a week to go before the NFL draft deadline is here, that money has to come from somewhere. So you have to be willing to make sacrifices. And I don't know, the football roster builder guy in me looks at it and says, well, I would much rather pay Caden McDonald $3 million next year than Bo Jackson half of that, because I think you can replace a running back. I don't think you can replace Caden McDonald next year.
I think he's the single most irreplaceable player on the roster.
Right. So like, these are the questions that people have to ask. And I know it frustrates and irritates the fan base that you can't just pay them all, but like you can't pay them all.
I promise at some point there will be a more uplifting version of the beat.
I hope it's instructive, at least. I hope it's at least giving people a way to think about this that maybe drives them slightly less crazy. But in the meantime, if it's only making you nuts, I would just say step away from college football for a few months and just wait till the season starts. You can still check in on our show, and you still should, because we'll talk about other stuff every once in a while, like wrestling or you know, our favorite way to prepare a pizza or whatever. But I just think that when
we haven't had a mailbag with fun questions like that in a long time. People don't care about our favorite pizzas anymore.
No, they don't. But that's all right. I don't blame them. It's a hard time to be excited about what's going on. So,
but the good news is there is only one portal window, and once it's open, we might get back to some sense of normalcy. I can't guarantee it, but I sure hope so. No matter what, craziness, chaos, or not, we will be here all day every day, talking about Ohio State football on 97.1 The Fan, 10TV, 10TV Plus, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us again on a Three Thoughts Thursday, a throw-in Thursday. It's presented by the Waterworks, and we're going to
throw
be
it
back
away
again.
Thursday.
Throw it away. Throwing money away on Thursday too. He's Berm. I'm Austin. We appreciate you all. We'll see you tomorrow.